Listen, before I tell you anything, promise you won't think I'm crazy. People my age often get labeled like that the moment we say something that doesn't make sense to others. But what happened to me wasn't confusion. It wasn't imagination. It wasn't even a misunderstanding. It was real. Terrifyingly real. And if you stay with me to the end, you'll understand why I still sleep with my curtains pinned shut. You see, someone was leaving flowers outside my window every night. And before you say it, no, not the sweet kind of gesture you see in movies. These flowers, they weren't gifts. They were warnings. Messages. Signs that someone had been standing just inches from me while I slept. Someone who knew exactly where my bedroom was, exactly which window I kept cracked open for air, exactly when I turned off the light. I didn't notice at first. Old women like me, we assume kids are just being silly or neighbors are throwing things around. But the first night, I found a single white daisy on the windowsill. Not on the porch. Not on the ground. Right. On my sill. Placed carefully. Like a hand had rested there longer than it should have. I tried to ignore it. I really did. Lord knows, at my age you learn not to panic over every small thing. But the second night there were 2 daisies. The third night 3. They kept multiplying like some twisted countdown, or count up, to something I didn't want to imagine. Now listen, sweetheart, I was already nervous enough. My hands were shaking when I'd closed the blinds. My breaths got short every time I walked past that part of the house. But things got worse, much worse, the night I finally saw the shadow. It was around 2:30 a.m. I had woken up because I thought I heard someone whisper my name. Not loud. Not clear. Just the faintest breath of sound, like someone with their lips almost touching the glass. My heart pounded so hard I felt it in my teeth. I reached for the lamp, but before I could turn it on, I froze. There was a silhouette on the other side of the curtains. Tall. Completely still. Not hunched like an old man or slouched like a teenager. Straight. Rigid. Like a figure carved out of coal. And what terrified me most wasn't the presence. It was the stillness. A living person shifts their weight. They breathe. They twitch. But that thing didn't move at all. Not even a centimeter. I don't know how long I sat there staring at the curtain, praying it was just a trick of the moonlight. But then, God help me, I heard the tiniest tap against the glass. Soft. Intentional. Like a nail. Not a finger. A nail. Sweetheart, let me ask you something. If you heard a tap on your window at 2:30 in the morning, knowing someone had been leaving strange gifts there for days, would you get up and look? Or would you stay frozen like I did? Because I stayed. Completely still. Like a child hiding under the blankets from a monster. I didn't move until sunrise. And when morning finally came and I dared to look outside, there were 4 daisies on the sill, perfectly lined up, facing inward, as if watching me. That was the moment fear turned into certainty. Someone was coming close to me every night. Someone who didn't want to be seen. Someone who was counting something, maybe days, maybe tries, maybe warnings. And I couldn't tell if the flowers were meant to comfort me or torment me. So that night I made a decision. A stupid one, maybe, but a necessary one. I placed my old rocking chair right beside the window. I didn't close the curtains. I didn't turn off the lamp. I sat there waiting with my shaky cup of tea and the phone within reach. If they wanted to stand outside my window again, I'd be ready to look them dead in the eyes. I kept the room silent enough to hear the hum of the refrigerator down the hall. I listened to the clock tick so loudly I wondered if it always sounded like that or if fear sharpened my senses. Hours passed. Midnight. 1, 2, 3. Every creak of the house made me jump. I whispered to myself, if you're out there, I'm not afraid anymore. That was a lie. Of course it was. I was terrified. But sometimes you have to say the opposite of what your heart feels, so your spirit doesn't collapse under the weight of fear. It was almost 3:15 a.m. when it happened. At first, just the wind brushing the side of the house. Then nothing. Then something new. A soft shuffling sound, feet stepping on leaves. Slow. Measured. Like someone didn't care if I heard them. I gripped the armrests. I leaned forward. My breath felt stuck in my throat, like someone was squeezing it shut from the inside. Then the shadow appeared. But this time it wasn't just a shape. It leaned closer. Closer. Until I could see the outline of a head. Hair. Shoulders. And something in their hand. A flower. But it wasn't a daisy this time. No. It was something much, much worse. Before I tell you what it was, before I explain why that single flower made my blood run cold, do me a favor. If you want me to keep telling you exactly what happened next, hit that follow button so you don't miss what I'm about to reveal. Because the night I finally caught the person leaving those flowers was the night I learned the truth no one in my family believes. And what I saw when I opened that window changed my life forever. I wish I could tell you I flung that window open right then and there, that I was brave enough to face whoever was standing outside my home. But bravery isn't something that comes naturally when you've lived long enough to understand what real danger feels like. It sinks into your bones. It whispers old memories back to life. And that night, fear wrapped its arms around me so tightly that even breathing felt wrong. But I still leaned forward. I still watched. Because curiosity can be stronger than fear when you need answers. The figure outside my window raised the flower slowly, almost gently, as if performing some kind of ritual. The porch light behind me flickered just enough to cast a faint glow out the window, and that's when I saw it clearly. It wasn't a daisy. It was a wilted red rose. Half dead. Browning. Falling apart at the edges like it had been plucked long before it ever reached my window. And sweetheart, that rose meant something. Something personal. Something I had tried to forget decades ago. My breath hitched the moment I saw it. You see, the last time someone gave me a rose that looked exactly like that, my husband had just been buried. I felt my throat tighten as I whispered his name under my breath, like maybe, just maybe, some part of him had sent this sign. But no, that was foolish. He's been gone for 32 years. Nothing about this was spiritual. This was human. Deliberate. Living. The shadow leaned closer, and for a split second I saw the outline of a face, long, narrow, unfamiliar. The kind of face that didn't belong to any neighbor I knew. The kind of face you'd remember if you'd ever seen it before. I forced myself to stand. My knees cracked so loudly I flinched. The shadow stiffened. And in that moment I realized something. They weren't expecting movement. They weren't expecting me to be awake. They thought I was asleep like all the other nights. They thought they were alone out there. Which means they watched me all those nights without knowing I finally caught on. I reached slowly for the window latch. My heart hammered so violently it felt like it might bruise my ribs from the inside. My fingertips brushed against the cold metal. I swallowed. Hard. Every instinct in me screamed don't do it. But something else, something older, something deeper, pushed me forward. I needed to know. As I began lifting the latch, the figure outside jerked back sharply, almost like an animal startled by sudden movement. They froze again, rose still in hand, waiting, watching, measuring me. And maybe I shouldn't say this, but darling, something felt familiar. Not the face, not the shape, but the stillness, the way they stood, the carefulness, like someone who had learned to walk quietly, someone who knew how to avoid being seen. I finally pushed the window open just an inch, and that inch was enough to make the cold air rush into the room and sting my eyes. Why are you doing this? I whispered. No response. Who are you? I asked, louder this time, voice trembling but steady enough to be heard. Still no response. Not even breathing. The silence stretched until it felt unbearable. And then slowly the figure lifted the dying rose even higher. Not toward me. No. Toward the space between us. As if asking, begging me to take it. Sweetheart, let me ask you something. If someone you didn't know was standing outside your window in the middle of the night, holding out a flower that connects to the darkest part of your past, would you take it? Or would you run? 'Cause I didn't take it. But I didn't run either. I stood there, frozen halfway between fear and memory, until the figure suddenly turned, fast like a shadow snapping into the night, and walked away. Not ran. Walked. Calm. Quiet. Like they had all the time in the world. I rushed to the window, peering out as far as my old bones allowed, but I couldn't see where they went. The yard was empty. Silent. Too silent, like even the insects were holding their breath. And there, left on the sill, was the wilted rose. I didn't touch it. I couldn't. It felt like touching it would pull something from the past straight into my present. So I closed the window. I locked it. Then I drew every curtain in the house shut until not even a thread of moonlight could slip through. I wish I could tell you that was the end of it. That I slept peacefully, satisfied that I had finally scared them away. But fear doesn't disappear that easily. It sits beside you. It follows you down hallways. It whispers doubts. I kept pacing the living room, checking the locks, staring at the front door like it might open on its own. Every creak of the house pulled my attention. Every shadow felt unfamiliar. I didn't sleep for even a second. When morning finally came, I forced myself to step outside. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed proof. Proof that what happened wasn't some twisted dream. The air smelled damp, like it had rained lightly in the early hours. The leaves were wet beneath my slippers. And the grass near my window, God help me, was flattened. Footsteps. Real ones. Leading toward the woods behind my house. I followed them. Yes, I know how dangerous that sounds. An old woman wandering into the trees looking for someone who'd been sneaking around her property at night. But it wasn't bravery that pushed me into those woods. It was something else. Recognition. Something about the way that person moved. The silence. The patience. It tugged at a memory I had buried years ago. The footprints continued deeper until they reached a small clearing. One I knew very well. Too well. Because it was the place my husband used to take me for morning walks. And right there in the center of that clearing was something that made my heart nearly stop. A small torn piece of fabric. From a jacket. A jacket I had seen before. A jacket I hoped I would never see again. Before I tell you whose jacket it was, and why seeing it made my hands go numb, you need to stay close. Things are about to get darker. And I need you with me for every second of it. I bent down slowly, my knees trembling, and picked up that torn piece of fabric with the tips of my fingers. It was damp from the morning dew, darker around the edges where it had ripped clean through the stitching. A simple scrap of dark green cloth. But it made my whole body go cold. Because I knew this fabric. I knew it too well. It belonged to a jacket my son used to wear when he was a teenager. A jacket he lost the night he ran away from home. I stood there in that quiet clearing with the trees whispering around me, and for a moment I forgot how to breathe. Memories rushed back, sharp and bright, like someone had opened a locked door inside my mind and shoved them all out at once. My son running out the front door, slamming it so hard the glass rattled. His voice shouting that he never wanted to come back. The storm that rolled in right after he disappeared. The search parties. The police. The neighbors whispering behind walls. And the day we finally got the call. That they found something near a riverbank. Not a body. Not a trace of him. Just that jacket, ripped, muddy, cold as the water it was pulled from. He was pronounced dead a year later. Presumed drowned, they said. No signs of foul play, they said. Let the boy rest, they said. But I never believed that. Not for a moment. Because a mother knows. A mother always knows. And something inside me never accepted that he was gone. Now here I was decades later standing in the woods behind my house, holding what looked like the exact same torn piece of that same jacket. And for the first time in years, I felt something stirring inside me. Hope. Or horror. I didn't know which one yet. My hand shook violently as I held that scrap of fabric against my chest. I looked around the clearing searching for more signs. Another footprint, a trail, a broken branch, but everything seemed too still, too untouched, as if whoever had been here vanished straight into the trees. I whispered my son's name into the wind. Not loudly. Not desperately. Just softly, like a tired prayer that had been waiting 30 years to escape my lips. And, I swear to you, I heard something answer. Not words. Just the faintest sound of leaves shifting, like someone was stepping backward, away from me, retreating deeper into the woods. I turned sharply but saw nothing, only the thick shadows between the trunks and the thin pattern of morning sunlight breaking through the branches. Honey, I whispered to myself, don't be foolish. You're hearing things. You're imagining it. But deep down I knew better. At my age I don't imagine things like that. I don't chase footsteps that aren't real. And I don't find pieces of clothing from the dead unless something is terribly, terribly wrong. I slowly backed out of the clearing, my fingers clenched around the fabric scrap. And with every step I felt something watching me. Not a stranger's curiosity. No, something that felt familiar. Something that felt like it knew me. By the time I reached my backyard, my breathing was shaky and uneven. I locked the door behind me, shut every window, and sat at the kitchen table with the scrap of fabric laid out like evidence from a crime scene. And then a horrifying thought hit me. What if the person leaving the flowers wasn't just trying to scare me? What if they were trying to get my attention? What if they wanted me to follow them into those woods? I pressed my hands to my face, trying to think, trying to understand. And that's when another memory rose up, one I wish I could forget. Years ago, before the police declared my son dead, someone kept leaving small things on my porch. A bottle cap, a marble, a scrap of paper with half a drawing on it. Things that made no sense to anyone but me. Because my son used to collect them when he was little. At the time I thought it was kids being cruel, mocking a grieving mother. But now I wondered if I had been wrong all these years. Horribly wrong. Sweetheart, let me ask you something. If someone you loved, someone everyone told you was gone forever, started leaving signs that felt like messages, would you believe it? Or would you think you were losing your mind? Because I sat there for a long time, staring at that scrap of green fabric, feeling like the floor beneath my feet was tilting. My heart was pounding, my thoughts racing. Could my son be alive? Could he be close? Could he be the one standing outside my window holding those flowers each night? No, it couldn't be him. He would come inside. He wouldn't hide in the shadows. He wouldn't scare me. He wouldn't just stand outside silently. Unless he couldn't speak. Unless something happened to him. Unless the boy I lost wasn't the same person who grew up in the dark all these years. I shook my head as tears blurred my vision. I didn't know what to believe. Not yet. And the truth is, I was too afraid to believe anything at all. But that night, everything changed. I didn't sleep. I sat in that rocking chair again, staring at the window, waiting, because now I needed answers more than I needed sleep. Midnight passed. 1 a.m. passed. 2 a.m. The house was dead silent. And then at exactly 2:47 a.m., the window creaked. Not from outside. From inside the frame. Like someone was gently trying to lift it. My whole body locked. The hairs on my arms rose. The air felt wrong, thick and heavy, like the world was holding its breath. I held mine too. The window lifted another inch. Another. Then a hand slid under the frame. A real hand. Thin. Pale. Shaking. Not threatening but desperate. Desperately trying to reach inside. I gasped and covered my mouth, tears springing to my eyes, not from fear this time, but from something deeper, something that hurt more. Because I knew that hand. I recognized it instantly. Before I tell you whose hand it was, before I tell you the thing that shattered everything I believed, you need to stay with me. Because the truth I'm about to reveal will change the entire story. The moment that thin, trembling hand slid under my window frame, my knees almost gave out. I grabbed the armrest to steady myself because I knew that hand. Not from yesterday. Not from last month. From decades ago. Back when I used to hold it on the walk to school, back when that hand was small and warm and belonged to a boy who trusted me with his whole heart. It was my son's hand. Older now. Bones sharper. Skin paler. But I knew it. The shape of the fingers. The way the pinky curved slightly inward from the time he broke it falling off his bike. You can't forget things like that. Not when you're the one who kissed the tears off a child's cheeks while they winced in pain. My breath left me in one hard, silent gasp. I didn't scream. I didn't yell. I didn't run. I just stared at that hand like the world had stopped spinning. The window lifted another inch. The room felt cold, colder than it should have been. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, loud as a drum. Slowly, like he was afraid of startling me, the hand pushed upward, revealing more of the wrist, more of the arm, until finally, he spoke. Not clearly. Not loudly. Just one shaky, broken word. Mom. It wasn't the voice of a grown man. It wasn't the voice of a teenager. It was something in between, strained, fragile, raspy, like someone who hadn't used their voice in years. Maybe decades. My hand flew to my mouth. Tears spilled instantly down my cheeks. I whispered his name with a trembling breath, afraid that if I said it too loudly, he'd disappear again like a ghost. And slowly, so slowly it broke my heart, my son's face appeared between the curtains. Not the boy I remembered. Not the child who used to bring me wildflowers from this very yard. Not the teenager who slammed the door the night he ran away. This face. This face belonged to someone who had survived things I couldn't imagine. His cheeks were hollow. His eyes too big, too sunken. His hair long, messy, tangled like it hadn't been cut in years. Dirt smudged along his jaw. a bruise fading near his temple. He looked like someone who had lived outside the edges of normal life. Someone who had been hiding from the world, or from something far worse. I reached out with shaking fingertips, afraid to touch him in case he wasn't real, and the moment my skin brushed his, he flinched back like he'd been burned. "No, no, don't go," I whispered, leaning forward. He swallowed hard, eyes darting around the room, then back to me. He looked terrified. Not of me. Of being seen. Of being caught. "Mom, I didn't mean to scare you," he whispered. "I didn't know how to come back." Come back. The words hit me like a hammer. My son, dead for 32 years, was standing half inside my bedroom, telling me he didn't know how to return. My head felt light. My vision blurred. "Where have you been? Why didn't you?" My voice cracked. "Why didn't you come home?" He didn't answer right away. His breathing was uneven, shaky. He looked down at his hands, rubbing his fingers together like he was trying to warm them. Then he lifted his eyes again, those same brown eyes I used to see every morning at breakfast. "Someone was following me," he whispered. "Back then, after I left. Someone who knew where I went. Someone who didn't want me to make it back home." He swallowed again. Hard. Someone who tried to make sure I never would. My whole body froze. "Who?" I whispered. He shook his head, tears filling his eyes. "I can't tell you yet. I can't. If I say it, they'll know I told you." My heart slammed against my ribs. This wasn't just a lost boy story. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a runaway who changed his mind. Something darker had been hiding behind the years. Something he was still running from. "Sweetheart, let me ask you something. If someone you loved suddenly showed up after everyone claimed they were dead, and said someone dangerous had been following them for decades, would you believe them instantly? Or would you think trauma had twisted their memories?" Because as much as I wanted to believe my son completely, something in his eyes terrified me. Something he wasn't saying. Something he was hiding behind that trembling voice. I reached toward him again, but he shook his head, backing away slightly. "I can't stay," he whispered. "Not yet. I needed to see you. I needed to make sure you were here." My chest tightened. Where else would I be? A small broken smile flickered across his face, the kind he used to make when he was trying to be brave. "He thought you moved," he whispered. "The man who followed me. He said you were gone." A shiver ran through me. "Who said that? Who told you that?" But before he could answer, a sound echoed from the woods. A low snapping branch. Then silence. My son's eyes widened with pure raw fear. "They found me," he choked out. "I have to go." "No." I grabbed the window frame. "Please, please don't leave me again. Come inside. You're safe here." "No," he said, shaking his head violently. "You're not safe if I stay. I'm being watched, Mom. Every night. Every move. They'll hurt you if I come inside." My heart cracked in half. "What are you talking about? Who is watching?" He leaned forward until his face was only inches from mine, tears spilling down his cheeks. "Don't trust anyone. Not the neighbors. Not the man with the dog. Not the mailman. Not the new boy who moved in across the street. Don't talk to strangers. Don't ask questions. And whatever you do," another crack in the distance. His head snapped toward the noise. "Don't look out the window tomorrow night." "Why?" I whispered, trembling. He hesitated, then whispered the words that chilled me to the bone. "Because he's coming." My breath caught. "Who?" His voice broke. "The man who tried to kill me." Before I could speak, before I could even reach for him, he pulled the window down, slipped into the darkness outside, and vanished into the trees. I pressed my trembling hands to the cold glass, sobbing silently as his shadow disappeared. And deep in the woods I heard it. Footsteps. Not his. Someone else. Someone heavier. Someone who stopped exactly where my son had been standing. Someone who breathed loudly enough for me to hear from across the yard. Before I tell you what happened the next night, what I saw when I ignored my son's warning, you need to stay with me, because everything is about to get even darker. Oh, sweetheart, when I tell you that night nearly took the life out of me, I mean it with every trembling breath in these old lungs. After I read that letter and realized someone had been coming to my window out of fear, not obsession, I didn't sleep. I sat in my chair with the lamp dimmed low, listening to every tiny sound in my house. My heart was beating so fast I could swear it shook the room. And maybe you'll think I'm foolish, but I kept that flower from the night before right beside me, like it was somehow protecting me. Isn't it strange how even old women like me cling to small comforts when the world feels too dark? I spent hours thinking about who could have written that letter. The handwriting was soft, shaky, like someone who'd been carrying fear alone for far too long. And the words, oh dear, those words were carved with desperation. It kept echoing in my mind. You're the only one I trust. He told me not to speak to anyone, but I can't keep quiet anymore. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept wondering what kind of secret would push someone to sneak through the night just to leave me a message. Then somewhere deep in the quiet I heard something. A noise outside my window. Not loud, not violent, but intentional. A soft crunch of leaves under feet. And I don't know why I did it. Maybe it was foolish courage or maybe it was the loneliness of living alone. But I stood up, walked to my window and pressed my palm against the cold glass. My voice barely worked when I whispered, if you're out there, I'm listening. I waited. First nothing. Just the wind brushing through the bushes. But slowly a shadow moved. A small one. Trembling. And my heart dropped because I recognized the shape, thin shoulders, narrow posture, head slightly tilted downward. It was the same figure I'd seen before. And Lord help me, I felt both fear and compassion at the same time. The shadow stepped back when it saw I was awake, like it wasn't sure whether to run or stay. My voice cracked as I whispered through the glass. You don't have to be afraid of me. The figure didn't speak, didn't move, just stood there shaking. I lifted my hand again, palm open as if offering safety. Please just tell me what you need. That's when a cold breeze swept through the yard and carried a small sound to me. A sniffle. A quiet, broken, painful little sniffle. And I realized they were crying. My old heart couldn't take it anymore. I unlocked the window just an inch. Only an inch, mind you. Enough to let my voice through without letting danger in. Sweetheart, I said softly. Are you hurt? The crying stopped instantly. A soft gasp followed. Then footsteps retreating. No, wait. I whispered harshly and tapped the glass. Please. I want to help. But the figure was gone. Slipped back into the darkness behind the hedges. I stood there for several minutes, clinging to the window frame like it was the only thing keeping me upright. For a moment I wondered if I imagined the entire thing. But when I closed the window again, something caught my eye on the ground. Another flower. This one was different. It wasn't a vibrant rose or fresh bloom like before. It was wilted, drooping, like it had been held too tightly or carried too far. And tucked under it another note. My fingers shook as I reached out, slowly unlocking the window and stretching my hand down to grab it. The cold air bit at my skin, but I didn't care. I opened that note right there with my breath fogging up the glass. 2 short sentences. Written in that same trembling hand. He's coming tonight. Don't let him find me. I swear to you my knees almost gave out. I had to sit back in my chair with the note in my lap, reading those words over and over again. What kind of danger had I stepped into without even knowing? And who was he? I thought about calling someone. The police. My neighbor. Anyone. But the note said don't let him find me. And maybe that was foolish logic, but it felt like calling someone might make everything worse. You tell me, darling, what would you have done if you were in my place? Would you have called for help immediately? Or trusted the stranger who had been leaving flowers at your window in the dead of night? I still don't know if I chose right, but I made a decision. I went to every door and window in that house, checking each lock twice, sometimes 3 times. My hands were trembling the whole time, but I kept moving. Then I turned off every light. Not out of fear, but because I didn't want whoever he was to know where I was in the house. For the first time in years I hid. Not like an old woman living carefully, but like a child who knew something bad was coming. I pulled a blanket around myself and sat behind the living room couch, where I could see the yard through a narrow gap in the curtain but couldn't be seen from outside. The night stretched on so slowly it felt like time stopped. Every creak of the house made me flinch. Every rustle of leaves made my breath catch. At around 2:30 in the morning, when everything was so silent it almost hurt, I heard it. Not soft footsteps like the trembling figure earlier, but heavy ones. Confident. Slow. Walking across my yard with purpose. I didn't dare breathe. My hand covered my mouth on instinct, like my body was trying to protect me even when my mind froze. The footsteps stopped right outside my window. My heart slammed so hard against my ribs that I thought my body might betray me with sound. And then a voice. Low. Cold enough to freeze the blood in my veins. I know you're out here. I felt every hair on my arms rise. Those words weren't meant for me. They were meant for whoever had been leaving me flowers. He waited, stood there for what felt like a lifetime, and then he said something that still chills me to this day. You can run, but I always find you. The footsteps turned and slowly walked away. I stayed hidden until dawn painted the world pink again. My body was stiff, my back aching, heart exhausted from fear. As the sunlight filled the room, something inside me hardened. I wasn't going to let this go on. Whoever that trembling figure was, they needed help. And whoever he was, he wasn't going to take another step toward my window without me knowing. Because I had made up my mind. I was going to catch them both. Oh honey. If chapter 5 chilled your bones, then what happened the next night nearly shattered mine. I'm not as young as I used to be. And my heart can only take so much fear before it starts to feel like the whole world is spinning off its axis. But even so, even with my hands trembling and my breath constantly catching in my throat, I knew I couldn't just sit there and wait to be swallowed by someone else's darkness. I had to do something, and I had to do it before nightfall. But the truth is, sweetheart, I didn't even know where to begin. What was I going to do? Walk into the police station and say, "Hello, officer. Someone keeps leaving flowers at my window and another man is hunting them like a wolf stalking prey?" They'd look at me like just another lonely old woman who reads too many crime stories. So instead, I forced myself to walk out into my yard while the sun was still up. Even though every step made me feel like I was trespassing on my own land. I needed to understand what was happening. I needed to look for anything. And that's when I noticed something. On the edge of my flower bed, where the grass turns into soil, the dirt was disturbed. Not in a way that a raccoon or stray cat would do it. No, darling. It looked like someone had been kneeling there. 2 knee indents. Fresh. Close enough to my window that I could almost feel the echo of their presence. My throat tightened and I whispered to no one. Why me? Why my window? I kept searching, carefully brushing aside leaves with a stick. And that's when my heart leaped. Piece of fabric. Blue. Torn. Snagged on the corner of my rose bush. I crouched down, gasping from both fear and the pain in my knees, and pulled the fabric free. It was soft, maybe from a hoodie or thin jacket. And the size, just from the tiny strip, it looked small. Like it belonged to someone young. My heart ached. Not from fear. From worry. Sweetheart, I whispered to the wind. Whoever you are, what kind of danger are you in? And as if the world wanted to answer me, I heard it then. A voice. Small. Shaking. Hiding. Please don't tell him I was here. I nearly dropped the fabric. I turned around so fast I almost lost my balance. And there, half hidden behind my old storage shed, stood the same figure. Thin. Frightened. Shoulders curled inward like they were trying to disappear. For the first time I saw the outline clearly in the daylight. Definitely small. Definitely young. My voice cracked. Come here, sweetheart. Please. I won't hurt you. They didn't move at first. They lifted their head a little, and though I couldn't see their face through the shadows, I could feel the fear radiating off them like heat. Then they whispered. He followed me last night. I had to hide. I didn't know where else to go. I stepped closer, slow as a prayer, holding out the piece of fabric. Is this yours? A tiny gasp. Then a nod. And then the figure stepped forward. Just enough that the sun touched their face. I almost cried. It was a girl. No older than 12 or 13. Dirt on her cheeks, hair tangled, eyes red from crying and lack of sleep. She looked like she hadn't eaten properly in days. And Lord forgive me, but the sight of her broke my heart in a way I hadn't felt since I was a mother with little ones of my own. She looked at the fabric in my hand and whispered. I ripped it when I ran. I swallowed hard. What's your name, sweetheart? Her eyes filled with fear again as she shook her head. I shouldn't tell. He said if I tell anyone, he'll. She choked on her words. Oh darling, I wrapped my arms around her before she even finished. She flinched at first. Poor thing probably hadn't felt a safe touch in a long time, but then she leaned into me with such desperation it almost cracked my ribs. I whispered into her hair, "You're safe here. Promise you. He won't hurt you. Not while I'm breathing." But she pulled back suddenly, eyes wide. "You don't understand. He comes at night. He watches. He listens. He knows where I go. If he finds out I came here." She didn't finish. She grabbed my arm with little trembling fingers. "He hurt people before. He'll hurt you too." I cupped her face gently. "Look at me. I've lived long enough to know when I'm in danger. And right now, I'm not scared of him. I'm scared for you." She looked down at the ground, voice trembling like a brittle leaf. "I didn't know where else to go. You were the only house with lights on late at night. I thought maybe you'd understand." My old heart softened even more. "Of course I understand, sweetheart. But you need to tell me something. Why my window? Why leave flowers?" Her lip quivered. "Because my mama used to say, people who keep flowers alive are kind. And your garden was the only one that still had color." Oh dear. I almost cried again. "So you trusted me." She nodded. And then suddenly her head snapped up, her entire body tensing. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. I froze. At first I heard nothing but the wind brushing against the shed. But then a crunch. Heavy. Deliberate. Footsteps. Not in my yard. Behind the fence. Slow. Searching. Too close. The girl panicked and grabbed my wrist so tightly I almost yelped. It's him, he found me. He always finds me." I hushed her quickly and pulled her behind the shed, crouching low. "Don't move. Don't make a sound." My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might give away our hiding spot. I peered through a crack in the wooden boards. And that's when I saw him. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Moving along the fence like he was hunting. His head jerked side to side, scanning. His jaw tight. His steps heavy. He was looking for her. The same cold voice from the night before cut through the air. "Come out. I know you're close." The girl beside me squeezed her eyes shut so tight it looked painful. I held her tighter and whispered, "Don't worry, sweetheart. I've got you." But inside I knew one thing with terrifying certainty. This wasn't going to end peacefully. And I wasn't just protecting a scared child anymore. I was standing between her and a man who didn't believe in mercy. Oh, sweetheart. This final part still shakes my bones when I think about it. Because that night, when danger wrapped itself around my little yard, I realized something I never thought I'd face again at my age. I wasn't just hiding from a nightmare. I was standing inside one. I held that poor trembling girl against me, her tiny hands clutching at my sleeve like she was holding on for dear life. And I'll tell you this straight, there's a kind of fear that changes people, makes them fierce. And I felt it burning inside me like a flame I hadn't felt since I was a young mother protecting my babies. But that man on the other side of the fence, he moved differently. Purposefully. Like he'd been hunting for a long time and was confident he'd catch what he wanted. I could hear his breathing. Slow. Measured. Too controlled for a normal man. The girl's body shook against mine, and she whispered so softly I almost didn't hear it. "He's close, he's so close." I placed my hand over her mouth gently, not to silence her, but to comfort her. "Shh, sweetheart, I'm right here. I'm not letting him take you." But inside, my heart was pounding hard enough I thought the ground might feel it. Then the footsteps stopped. Right behind my fence. Right behind us. The girl froze. And then that voice, cold as winter steel, cut through the air. "I know you're in there. I can hear you breathing." Oh darling, I swear it felt like a bucket of ice water had been poured down my spine. I hadn't breathed that loudly. Neither had she. Which meant, he was guessing. Or worse, testing. The girl squeezed my arm with a panic so sharp it nearly tore me apart. I leaned down and whispered into her hair. "Listen to me carefully. We're going to move, but slowly. As slow as shadows." I took her tiny hand in mine. And we crawled. Quietly. Carefully. Every leaf crunch sounded like thunder in my ears, even though it was barely a sound at all. I kept praying silently, "Lord, hide us. Please hide us." As we moved behind the shed toward the back door of my house, the man's footsteps started again. walking the length of the fence, each step heavy, like he was trying to draw her out by fear alone. At one point the girl tripped over a stone. She gasped. A tiny terrified sound, and I felt her body tense like she expected him to jump the fence right then. But thank God he didn't hear. Or maybe he thought the noise was just the wind. We finally made it to the back steps. My hand shook as I reached for the doorknob, praying it wouldn't squeak. Miraculously it didn't. I opened it just enough for us to slip inside, and the moment I locked it behind us, the girl collapsed on the floor, shaking with silent sobs. I knelt beside her. "Sweetheart, you're safe. You hear me? You're safe." She shook her head violently. "No, he won't stop, he never stops." My heart cracked. I brushed her hair back gently. "Then we're going to change that tonight." She looked up at me with those terrified eyes. "How?" "He's stronger. He's faster. He always finds me." I smiled softly even though my heart was breaking. Because he's never dealt with an old woman who's truly angry. Right about then something inside me snapped into place. Not fear, determination. I'd spent my whole life trying to be gentle, kind, patient. But nobody, and I mean nobody, hurts a child under my watch. I helped her sit on the couch and said, "Stay here. No matter what you hear, don't open this door unless I tell you." She clung to my arm. "Please don't leave me." I kissed her forehead. "I'm not leaving. I'm preparing." I walked straight to my kitchen, pulled open the drawer next to the stove, and grabbed the biggest, heaviest cast iron skillet I owned. You know, the one every grandma has, the one you only bring out when you're cooking something serious? Well, I was about to use it for something far more serious than cornbread. My plan wasn't perfect. Lord knows it wasn't safe. But I wasn't about to let that man break into my home without defending it. I turned off all the lights, closed every curtain except one small slit in the front window where I could watch him, and just minutes later, there he was, walking through my yard. Bold, fearless, searching. He stepped right up to my window. His face. Oh, sweetheart, his face was something out of a nightmare. Hard eyes, cold jaw, that smug expression like he'd already won. Then he leaned close to the glass and whispered, "I know she came here. I know you saw her. Do you think you can hide her from me?" I tightened my grip on the skillet. I stayed perfectly still, hidden in the shadows. He straightened up, scanned the yard again, then walked toward the back of the house, toward the door where the little girl was hiding. I moved, quiet as I could but fast. He tried the back door, found it locked, slapped it with his palm. "Open it. Now." I stepped behind him, my heart pounding like war drums in my chest. He lifted his fist like he was about to break the door in, and that's when I said, calm as anything, "Take one more step and I swear you won't like what happens next." He spun around, and for a moment, just a moment, he actually hesitated. Maybe it was the sight of an old woman standing there so calmly. Or maybe it was the cast iron skillet raised in my hand like a warning. He smirked. "Move aside, Grandma. She's mine." I stepped forward instead. "No, she's not." He lunged, but he underestimated me. I swung hard. The skillet connected with a sound I'll never forget. He stumbled, fell to one knee, groaning in shock, and I didn't give him time to recover. I swung again. This time he collapsed completely. I ran inside, locked the door, grabbed the phone, and called 911. My voice shook as I said, "This is Margaret Hayes, and I need the police immediately. I've got a child in danger and a man unconscious in my backyard." It felt like forever, but the police came fast. They took the girl to safety. They took the man away in handcuffs once he woke up. And when one officer assured me, "Ma'am, you saved her life tonight," I finally let myself cry. The little girl hugged me before they drove her away. She whispered, "Thank you for being the light when everything was dark." And I hugged her back and said, "You were the brave one, sweetheart." My window hasn't had flowers left under it since. And sometimes I miss the petals, but not the danger. I still keep the first flower in a little glass jar. A reminder that even in the darkest nights, someone might be searching for a safe place. And sometimes, that safe place is you.